Okay, my turn?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Yat e bene. My name is Ed Miles Harvey. Nanash eje tachinishle, tsotsoni bashichin, torechini dasche, aro toeglini dashinale. And I'm from the Navajo Nation. If you imagine a map of the Navajo Nation, I'm from the I'm from the bullseye of the Navajo Nation, right in the center of it. Um, Growing up here on the res, there's not many opportunities, and especially for farmers and ranchers. And recently, I feel that there's been a lot of backlash and within the agricultural community. And I wanted, just recognizing that, I wanted to be of service and fully help people, especially underserved local people at the very heart of the Navajo Nation, pursue agricultural development. And in doing my work, in doing my business, I've just had an amazing opportunities presented to me in being able to establish my partnership with all of these organizations. Um, the president, Navajo Farmer Rancher Congress, and MIT Solver, and board members of multiple organizations, and including a guardian of Guardians of the Galaxy. No, no, no. Guardians Collective of United Nations. So there's just so many like cool things that I'm a part of, but at the very core of it, it's helping people navigate systemic barriers that we're facing between three different governments here on the Navajo Nation. And okay, so I will start my presentation. Next slide. I have a disclaimer statement here. You're more than welcome to read through it. It basically says that final decisions or anything approvals remain with appropriate agencies, and that I'm only here as a technical provider, as a technical assistance provider and a conservation planner. And my main thing is I want to help people understand land. I think more of in terms of I like to think I'm a beaver. And I mean, there's no water here on our reservation, but there's ways to like actually conserve water. And there's ways to strategize or at least identify the systematic barriers of controlling water that affects agricultural development for both farming and ranching. So that's why I started my business. But through my work, I was able to help over 250 families navigate this complex process, and I'm very excited to share it with everybody. Next slide. Here's some of the people that I've been able to help out so far, just a little bit of people. Um, my main goal is to reactivate agriculture so that our younger children have a shot and have the opportunity and have that cultural wisdom to continue agricultural development, um, both legally and traditionally, in maintaining our food sovereignty so that it's not weakening, but that we're strengthening it together. And it's just so amazing being able to be the forefront of this large movement in saving or reactivating land, saving agriculture as a whole, and simply helping people. I love it so much. Okay, next slide. So I started with Pinnacle Prevention, and again, many of the opportunities that are presented to me. One of the things I'm very proud of is being able to start my own food hub. You see, here on the Navajo Nation, we at our flea markets now, there's only like one or two farmers who are selling their produce. It used to be just full of squash and melons and corn and people selling their products. But now there's only one or two people, and it really hurts our. I just feel it really hurts us as a collective sovereign nation, and so with the program that I started with Pinnacle Prevention, Purchase Local Arizona, is identifying the farmers or purchasing directly for the farmers that I'm helping to navigate land, but then but purchasing for them and then distributing the food to them. Excuse me, distributing food to our um, uh, all of my partners all across the Navajo Nation, who they serve uh, early childhood education, veterans administrations, including including senior centers and chapters, and anywhere where people need food. And it's really cool to be a part of this. Next slide. Uh, okay, so now we'll get into the nitty-gritty um, land. So, from my work in helping out 250 plus people, I found that there's mainly five classifications of land, and it really depends on where your operation is at or where it's located. And how I find those is with a coordinate or doing field surveys, field assessments, or cornfield designs. And from there, I'm able to determine where their field is at or where their operation is at to figure out what kind of procedure or what kind of steps that they need to pursue in order to actually get that permit within their name. Next slide. So the Bureau of Indian Affairs had already has this system. They already go about this system in reissuing grazing permits. You see, the problem here is that not many people know how to activate this process, and it gets kind of complicated because when you're trying to explain this to an elder or a young child, then they don't really understand it, or at least understand what to do and how it starts. It kind of like confuses a lot of people. Um, and so the main thing is when working with local governments, it's I like to abide by it and understand how to navigate it, but then how am I going to help out a person based upon an already developed system? And well, for the Navajo Nation, any individual who is trying to get a farm permit or a ranching permit, they need to be recommended by the Navajo Nation elected official in order to navigate this process with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Next slide. But the problem is, many of our elders and the working class, younger folks, they don't have actual time to put this conservation plan together in the precise manner that BIA wants us. I know as governmental officials, we'll want something very professional document, we'll want to understand what you're doing from a professional degree. But when you're trying to get an elder to do it, it just doesn't happen, and it just becomes complicated, and they don't do it at all. So I understand BIA's perspective on that, and that's where I'm trying to help the elder, but also help out BIA as well, so that they're actually able to get land transferred to their younger children. But recently, we've been dealing with cancellations of permits. You see, when COVID happened, COVID wiped a lot of people away. A lot of people passed on, and a lot of those people had agricultural permits, but now everything's tied up within the probate system. Um, and the probate system, people need to get when people are scheduled within their court, they're scheduled 10 years in advance, and it would stall and bottleneck a lot of like agricultural development or anything you're trying to do, you're prevented from doing it by your local official. And well, some people get help, but most people don't because, because favoritism and nepotism, it's a big thing around here. A lot of people don't want a relative or a cousin, a lot of people don't want them to advance in their agricultural endeavor, because land here is the biggest thing where people are trying to claim and grab land and say, this is mine, this is mine, this is my grandpa's, and this has been in our family for a long time. So there's a lot of arguments, land is one of the most pressing issues here on the Navajo Nation. But the most confusing thing of all is that even when someone's trying to navigate this process, next slide. There's many different types of conservation plans that BIA and the Navajo Nation specifically want. Um, the Navajo Nation is comprised of all these different land classifications. There's like multiple land classifications. You have tribal trust lands, you have allotments, you have private land, then you have national monuments and um, tribal ranches, RMUs, farm boards. There's all these different confusing jurisdictional boundaries that people don't understand. But anytime that someone is trying to continue their operations, then that's where they'll be denied because how elders would fill out these application is handwritten. They'll just write it as fast as they could. We have cows, we do this, we do that, and they'll submit it. But right then and there, BIA will deny it. And not only that, but external conservation plans are not accepted, which includes, like non-profited or institutionals or NRCS plans. Next slide. Yeah, but the thing is, when BIA, they share their documents with all of the public. And it's that document that they share that I use to create these conservation plans. And just recently, about a month ago, or at least 2 months ago in January, I was told, Ed, you're not supposed to use our conservation plans without written approval. But it's kind of weird because they send out these documents or they want the elders to fill out these specific documents, but they don't want me to help them out, which is kind of strange. But it's also okay too. It's good for me. Next slide. It's good for me because um, I created my own conservation plan. And the cool thing about my conservation plans are it's accepted by all boards, all across the Navajo Nation. Um, the main reason why is because I put so much information, I strategize so much for the person so that they're able to understand how much they're investing into their land or how much they're investing into their animals, and then what the return is going to be, and then how to address land with all of the degradation problems, whether it's erosion, lack of grass, or if there's a degradation of land as a whole, or if there's sedimentation, how can those be addressed and how can they be fixed? So these conservation plans, the way that I do it is as a strategy that actually helps the client bypass bypass a lot of systematic barriers, but also allows them to understand that conservation, that the understanding of methods of conservation so that they can use it as a guideline, whether they're applying for business or excuse me, whether they're applying for like grants and opportunities, or if they're just trying to figure out what can we do with the shovel here. And yeah, so next slide. So in total, I've done 254 conservation plans all over the place here in the Navajo Nation. And on the Navajo Nation, it's not just one giant trust land, but it's broken up by many different jurisdictional boundaries. And each and every one of those are like, oh my God, they're very confusing. For the average person or for an elder, everything just doesn't make sense. But a conservation plan is what's enforced upon the people in order to remain active within the land. And that's where it hurts a lot of people because nobody knows how to actually do this process. Next slide. So, and that's the reason why I look at land as far as five classifications, but more, there's like seven of them. There's your major irrigation farm board, dry land and agricultural land use permits, which is a part of grazing land, And then there's sheep unit year-long grazing permits, which is one corral. And then we have seasonal grazing permits, which are two corrals. And then we have three different classifications, which are range management units, Navajo partition land, and then tribal ranches. So, go ahead, go forward. So these are all the different types of land that we have on Navajo Nation. It's mainly the checkerboarded areas that are kind of confusing. Everywhere where it's brown in the Navajo Nation, it's a little bit I won't say it's easy, but it's a little bit easier to understand that or it's a little bit easier for me to do the conservation plan because the land is kind of like shared among people, and that land here is not controlled by one person, but it's controlled by the entire Bureau of Indian Affairs, or Navajo Nation held in trust by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and thus the reason why our permitting system. Next slide. And so this is where I classified, or this is where I looked at the difficulty of attaining a permit in helping out. In the past 4 years of helping out people all across the Navajo Nation, I found that there's easy ways to achieve land, but there's also like the most difficult ways to achieve that specific operation. So here just kind of like ranks that major irrigation farm boards are one of the easiest just because NEPA, because you don't need NEPA processing, the land has already been disturbed for the past 100 years. And so it's much easier for a person to achieve land with farm boards, which will be the first we'll be talking about. And then from there, um, everything after that is out on the rangeland or out on the grazing land. That's the reason why there's farming and then there's ranching. Um, okay, next slide. So farm boards. Farm boards, the thing with farm boards is there's 13 farm boards all across the Navajo Nation. In the past 4 years, I surveyed 2,748 acres of cornfields, and I only found 2 acres of corn. It just blows my mind that nobody's planting anymore. But it's not that there's no farmers, it's just the systematic barriers to actually oversee the land and control the land, but to use the land for self-sufficiency is basically broken. But it's also the easiest to secure land within farm boards that nobody's actually trying to secure it because people think those farm board lands are grandfathered in, where it's actually on a 2-year basis, a 2-year lease basis. But since it's been fenced off and secured, people just think that, the family owns that and they just kind of leave to it. And so it prevents any further development, which causes weed encroachment and irrigation loss. Next slide, please. So here's just some of the farm boards that we have, just about 6 of them of 13. But I want us to look at cornfields specifically, which is on the bottom left screen here. And then we have all these farm boards all over the place. So go ahead, next slide. So cornfields. This is cornfields. There's less than 10 farmers here. They have about 56 farm plots that range from 10 to 25 acres, all these different various size farm plots, very, very, very large plots of land. Back in the 40s and 50s, this used to be a powerhouse of agricultural production, but a lot of people since then had passed on, and it's kind of hard for the community to restart again because there hasn't been direct involvement with our very own tribe, including our own chapter house. There hasn't been much movement, and the weeds show that story. Next slide, please. So I want to ask everybody as a group question and put the answer in the chat. Of 1,270 acres, how many acres are in production? Put your answer in the chat. Let's see. Guess how many acres? You can just throw a number out there. It's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty good. All right, you ready for the answer? Go right ahead. 1/16th. A 50 by 50 garden. Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's like that in many farms as well, and all the other farm boards all across the Navajo Nation, except maybe Shiprock. I don't know how many. I haven't walked Shiprock, but all the other farm boards are having this issue of no more corn. There's no one who's actually like really producing. There's still a few people, and I'm so proud of those people, and I encourage them every day. I'm always texting farmers and ranchers every day and asking them, "Are you going to plant? Are you going to plant this year?" And yeah, but my envision moving forward is I want to see all of this land converted back into cornfields. And honestly, that keeps me awake at night. Like I can't, there's so many things. I mean, I know the exact way to pursue it, and how I'm helping this community here is you can go to the next slide. How I'm helping out this community here is with just being socially involved, but developing rapport with the community, actually walking the lands and walking all those fields, finding them within the weeds. I found out that this is the farm boards that Cornfields is facing. And when I had done the same work for other cornfields like Danahozo, Rock Point, um, Saline Wheat Fields, I didn't really do much, but I just kind of checked out the area a few times. Red Lake, Crystal, Ganado. These are majority of the issues that people are facing within the farm boards is just basically what I highlighted here is, and the main one is in access to water and infrastructural damage. Fence lines are being buried and they're not being supported by the tribe, and that's pretty sad. Next slide. So during my time, the past 4 years, I try to go to cornfields every like once every 2 months just to visit with them. But the main thing is when BIA and I and the tribe, or well, just BNA and I, um, we were looking at whose farm plots are still active and what's the actual barrier involved with not actually planting. And the problem is many of those farm permits belong to people from the 50s and the 40s. And those individuals, those individuals, uh, the people in the pictures here, these are the grandchildren to those individuals. So these people on the pictures here, they've had this field for many generations, or like 3 or 4 generations. I think that's what it was. But they're also being denied access to water because of the weed encroachment and also the fence line loss and mainly trying to get the permit into their name. That's the hardest thing that they've been facing is what is that process and how does it work? And what's actually being done. And and it's exciting to see that now we're starting to get more farmers involved there. What used to be just 3 or 4 farmers now turned into uh, more than about 15 farmers there, and we're trying to fill up the rest of the farm fields. There's 56 plots there, and people. We're trying to find more farmers so that they can actually get the land to use the land. That's what I'm saying. Okay, now next slide. So from here, we're just going to kind of breeze through a little bit. This is images from Ganado Major Irrigation Farm Board. And then Rock Point Major Irrigation Farm Board. They both rely, or well, Ganado relies on the Ganado Lake. And then Rock Point relies on the uh, seasonal precipitation from the Chusca Mountains. Next slide, please. Here's Red Valley and Cove, and then Salient Wheatfields. Red Valley and Cove is an interesting case. Cove, everywhere in those mountains is where they used to extract the uranium back in like 40s and early 50s, around that time. Um, and so a lot of that uranium is still present. So the main issue with Red Valley community and Cove community is trying to identify what fields are affected by uranium. And so their farm board officials and their grazing officials are um, I mean, they grew up there and they understand that not to drink the water and not to build with rocks from those mountains. And so they have an interesting take on farming and agriculture, and I think they're doing a really good job. But it's people within the Red Valley who actually need that guidance in that process of using the land and then reactivating their farm plots. And Salient Wheatfields, I misspelled Wheatfields. Salient Wheatfields is more of the same. Um, Salient Wheatfields is also an interesting case. Planting seasons there, since it's higher up in the mountain, tends to be from about late April into June. So they definitely have to choose their crops wisely. In the image here, I helped out an individual who was going through a probate, who is trying to probate the late father's permit into the daughter's permit. But the family there doesn't want them to be there because the mom is from a different community. And you know how us Navajos are, we're kind of like, this is my land, but it gets so like confusing. Okay, next slide. Cameron. Cameron Farm Board, as well as Red Lake Farm Board. Cameron is located near Tuba City. They're about 4,000-foot elevation, and they have a large plot of land along the Little Colorado River, I think that's what it was. They have about 400 and I think it was like 68 acres or something like that, but there's been no fencing. They have access to water, but there hasn't been much fencing or opportunities to move forward with fencing or remarking the boundaries to actually put up the fence lines there. And then Red Lake, right near Fort Defiance, Arizona, um, nobody's farming there too. And it's just everywhere. No one's really farming. But there's additional farm boards. We have Denahotso, Olive Shiprock Community, which includes Gadi Eye, Ninahazad, and all those communities. Then we have Captain Tom Wash and Kienta, and then many farms. They have land that you can apply for. It just takes a conservation plan and community involvement. And when you have access to that land, you can establish yourself as a farmer. It just takes a little bit of capital and identifying funding opportunities. But more than that, it takes that community involvement to sit with the elder or sit with the elected official and talk about farming and securing that farm plot in your name so that your children have access to a field later on in life. Next slide. Okay. So moving forward from major irrigation farm boards, which is to me, the easiest land to secure. Now it kind of goes into a little bit kind of confusing areas, which is dry land agricultural land use permits, which is grazing land. So everything from here is grazing land from your grazing permit, seasonal grazing permit, and then your RMU and Navajo partition land. So moving into dry land farming. Next slide. Okay, so dryland farming. Dryland farming is pretty cool. The thing with dryland farming is it's outside of the farm board districts, or it's outside of the farm board jurisdictions. dryland farming is on grazing land. So if you have a home site, middle of nowhere, you can have a cornfield right next to it. It just takes this application to do it with the conservation plan, and then actually navigating the BIA Navajo Nation NEPA processes. But you can actually get a farm plot in your name. Pictured here is my fruit trees that I started 2 years ago, and it took me about one day to get this farm to get my orchard approved. And as a dryland farm, I have to rely on rainwater, but also haul water at the same time. Next slide. So here are some pictures of dryland farm plots all throughout the Navajo Nation, able to just help out people. Here is Bethy Gould in Cove community and her little cat, forgetting her little cat's name. Next slide. Bethy has 1 acre. Next slide. Here is the Canyon Diné um, cornfield, which is an agricultural land use permit. The issue that the community Canyon Diné is having is that it's a national monument, and they're not allowing any new people, any new farmers or any new residents to live within the canyon. Um, but what they're trying to do is reactivate their agricultural land use permits so that they can restore farming all throughout the canyon, like how it used to be a long time ago. And as a board member of the organization, it's really cool to be down there and to just to just soak in all the history and to be part of the community. It's a really beautiful place. Anybody who from wherever you guys are from, anybody who wants to come over or who's going to be in the Navajo Nation, hit me up. Yeah, let me know. Let's go check out the canyon. This is such a beautiful place to be. And there's still some original trees in the canyon from a long time ago that are still growing today. And one of the things in here too is I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kit Carson, but and the U.S. Army days, but they used to chop down all the trees to I guess to annihilate all of us. And some of those trees, they're regrowing. And you can see old like axe marks and like, those beaten trees, but they're regrowing and coming back stronger. It's just a beautiful place to be and something to experience. Next. This is a dryland agricultural use permit in Chusca Mountain. So cornfields, you can get a you can get a cornfield anywhere, um, basically. Cornfields, the government has no problem with issuing permits, and if but the main thing is they want to know if you've been farming or if your family's been farming for a long time. So this family here, her name's Jacqueline. She works for IXS. She's a really good friend of mine. Jacqueline and her siblings, Jimmy, Joan, and Helena, they all this is their parents' field from like 1920s or something. And so they continue to use this field together and that they're not fighting each other on who's going to take this permit or who's going to take it over. But as siblings, they're coming together and they have their children come together. And when they plant, they take that entire planting time as a family gathering. So as a larger family, they this year they invited me to check it out, so I'm gonna go check it out and help them plant. It's quite the honor to help them. Next slide. My trees. These are my trees. That's my pear tree right there. And I have apples, peaches, pears, plums, nectarines. Ah, man, it's so cool. I invite everybody who's on this out to my field just to check it out. Um, I want to plant 170 more to equal 300 fruit trees. And there's a building way in the back right there. If you kind of squint your eyes and look past that truck, the green truck on your left in the center, I'm currently building that house right now. because I want to process these fruits and make pies, make jams and jellies and all that. And oh, okay, okay. But this will be my experience on actually navigating the land use permit process. Next slide. So this is kind of difficult saying. This is kind of a uh, this is kind of like the systematic barriers that I'm dealing with. But when I got my conservation plan approved, I was guided more sense of on how this process would work and verbally accepted to say that you can proceed by both agencies. So that's where I started my fence line. And then that's where I planted my fruit trees with a grant from First Nations Development Institute, where last year we were able to harvest 5 buckets to make jams, jellies, and a whole bunch of other products. Um, but being verbally guided, uh, I was told that we're going to start your NEPA processing and we're going to start your actual application so that you can get your permit. Because my goal, they said this takes about 2 years to get, which gave me enough time because I want to drill water. Next slide. So I want to drill for water with NRCS and USDA. And one of the things that they have in there is that you must have control of the land and you must be a farmer for active farmer 3 out of the 5 years. And you have to show justification as for your water usage. So that's where I gathered my documents together, including created my justification water log here. And where I estimated I hauled more than 83,600 gallons of water just for my fruit trees to survive. Um, and that's why I wanted to drill for water so that I can use it for my fruit trees and use it for my cornfield um, because I want to be a successful farmer. I want to be self-sufficient, and that's what I'm in pursuit of. So next slide. And this is kind of where it's halting me right now. I mean, I'm not trying to criticize anybody or any organization, but to illustrate more of the patterns that many families are experiencing all across the Navajo Nation. So um, my permit is still in pending process. It's still pending. 3 years later, it's still pending. A week ago, I was told, um, Ed, you're not supposed to do this without a permit. And that made me question myself, like, because I'm reflecting on like a systematic failure because I was told that we'll start processing your application, but now they're being told I'm not supposed to apply to drill water or actually use this land. And it kind of gets me frustrated because I was asked just a week ago that whether site preparation occurred before final approval. And that question really reflected a real tension that not only that I face, but a lot of other farmers and ranchers faces. Do we wait for paperwork? I mean, do we wait indefinitely for an approval, or do we prepare responsibly for the next planting season? And it I mean, I'm not trying to blame anyone or anything like that, but the main thing is to raise awareness on asking how do we align agricultural timelines with administrative timelines? That's my main like pursuit here is I want producers to be compliant, but I also want them to be productive at the same time. And there's just so many like bureaucratic halts and red tape, and it's just preventing any production happening on the Navajo Nation. Like I said, cornfields, only 1/16th of an acre is being farmed, and in many farms, only 2 acres of 2,748 is only being farmed. I mean, and then now I'm being told by BIA that I wasn't supposed to do this. I mean, what am I? I don't know. I'm just frustrated. Okay, next slide, please. Anyways, so to go back to the process again and how it works. And so where I come in is from number one to number three, uh, which is establishing my connection and recommendation with the Navajo Nation elected officials so that I can then get recommended to an actual permit with an approved application and an approved conservation plan, and then and then allowing BIA to conduct the NEPA process for me. And so the same way that it works for cornfields is the same way that it works for grazing. And so that's how it kind of works here. Next slide. Grazing, one of those, grazing is one of those things where grazing happens all across the Navajo Nation, but there's different microclimates associated with the Navajo Nation. We have high mountains and we have high mesas, then we have canyons, then we have desert valleys, and everywhere in between we have these foothills and all of these different watersheds. So with all of those geographic or geomorphologic changes in the land, there's also these different rules that the BIA agency will enact. So moving forward, I'm going to kind of speak about the differences in like Western agency, Eastern agency, Navajo partition lands, and then like Northern, Fort Defiance, Central. So each of them have their own little rules and they have their own little laws, and it's all across the board. It's not so much the same, but you have to understand that there's a certain procedure in actually achieving that land for grazing or farming. So uh, we'll move forward. A sheep unit for one corral, on average for me, is typically 10 to 50 sheep units. Oh, next slide. Sorry. So about 10 to 50 sheep units, and one sheep unit equals one sheep, which essentially one sheep is 200 pounds on average. We'll say 150, 200. And sheep will eat about 6 pounds a day of dry forage, which is about 2,200 pounds a year. And 1,000 acres can support 91 sheep. And the same thing for a cow. Here on the Navajo Nation, four sheep equals one cow. So one 1,000 pound cow would eat about 26 pounds a day or about 9,500 pounds a year, which 1,000 acres can support 21 cows. So that's kind of average all throughout the Navajo Nation. Next slide. But those 1,000 acres are calculated upon perennial forage availability. So like I said, when there's different factors associated with land, whether it's high mountains or the lowest deserts, there's going to be a different there's just going to be like not much grass in some locations, and there's be a lot of grass in other locations, but it really depends on where your operation is taking place and then what animal is it that you're trying to take care of. Um, you can go forward, next slide. So that's why in my conservation plans, I utilize what's called the um, NDVI, Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, using the 1 meter resolution NAPE imagery with the National Agricultural Imagery Program images to compare my field data with pixel data. And pixel data, I don't just look at the most recent images, but I look at a factor of the earliest taken pictures versus the most current. And I subtract those together to give me my perennial forage availability, where then I'm able to determine the actual surface area of that pixel and then convert that to a vector. So that would give me how much grass is available for livestock consumption, depending on the weight of the animal, whether it's a 1,200-pound bull or a 100-pound or a 50-pound goat. So next slide. So, like I was saying, grazing permits criteria vary by agency and land classification. So, this also includes, as I mentioned before, that there was all these different templates. You have Western Agency questionnaires, you have Eastern Agency conservation plans, then you have the standard Navajo Nation plan, then you have USDA. And so that's where people are asking, well, how do I do this and which one do I use? But just generally, these examples that I have listed are from being told so by the BIA. Because I do a lot of conservation plans, my main commitment is establishing the rapport with my clientele, with an elder or with a young individual like myself, and maintaining that connection and asking them what happened, how did the discussion go, did you get the permit, or what did they say? Is there anything I can do? How can I edit this plan? And then that's where I reach out to BIA saying, getting their perspective because I don't just want to fill out these conservation plans because it's due or because to get it done, but I want to make sure that it accurately reflects land to a standard that the individual can use as a guide, but also BIA can use as an actual document to process through NEPA. So that's where I have to really listen to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, even though they get mad at me, or if the Navajo grazing official gets mad at me, or a land board gets mad at me. I see that as areas for improvement. And so some of the examples that you see here were based on being yelled at, which is funny. Um, but it definitely made me more aware of looking into the details on rangeland surveys, on taking care of an animal, and then moving forward into everything else. Okay. What's that? Okay. Okay, next slide. Let's just breeze through this. If you're more than welcome to read through these next slides. It is 11:50. I love this. I can talk about this forever. Next slide. This is Western Agency. This is Eastern Agency. Okay, feel free to screenshot this. This is fine. And then for Eastern Agency, feel free to screenshot it as well. And then Navajo partition lands is one. Next slide. Okay, so okay, three, two, one, screenshot it. Yeah, share these slides. Let's share these slides. Okay. So I think I'll wrap up my presentation then. It's about that 11:50 mark. Okay, one more. Okay.
Okay, we'll get into questions. Thank you, Ed, so much. Okay, so a question from Angel. Do you work with other tribes? I was just hired for the agriculture assistant coordinator for my nation. Congrats. And I would like to discuss with the director, um, also talk with you if you do work with other indigenous tribes. Sorry.
I do, yes. Right now, the only other tribe I'm working for is Hopi. Just because they're right next door. I could throw a rock at them. But I really do want to expand my reach. This is a passion of mine, and identifying systematic barriers for rurally underserved people happens everywhere throughout Indian country, and it's something that needs to be addressed from a standpoint of making a personal connections and relations to elders and making sure their voices are heard so that it continues for the children. So yes.
Perfect. Okay, next question from Elvira. Can entities, not individuals, lease these also all ups? Am I saying that right? And if they're inactive, I'm from wheat fields trying to help farmers rehabilitate their farm plots. Our farm board is the barrier.
Yeah, you can try other farm boards. You could try Crystal, and you could try Captain Tom Wash. You don't have to be subject to just them. But all the farm boards throughout Navajo Nation are looking for farmers, and they're especially looking for people to uh, reactivate their farm plots. Um, but it you'll have to register with your name. Entities, I would prefer going through a land use permit route. Oh, that's what you're asking, a land use permit. Yeah, ALUPs. I would very much prefer, yeah, you could do that, do an ALUP in your name and then have the entity fund it.
Oh, and then last one. Hello, my grandpa here on the reservation has a grazing permit, and my other grandpa used to have a cornfield out there on the same land. I plan on revitalizing that farm and continuing to plant out there. Is that okay? Since it will be my farm under his grazing permit, what steps do I need to take?
Do it. Yes. Yes. Just get it started and do it. And if you need help down the road, give me a call, text me, um, email me. I'll do everything to help you out and to help you reestablish that. And also, number one is everybody on the chat knows someone who has access to funding. So I would definitely reach out to a lot of just put out a question out there who has access to funding and get in contact with those people so that you have confidence going into this spring with funding so that you're able to actually reactivate that land. But we're all here to help each other, and that's why Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance started. All right.
Thank you for
But
the
I
shout
applaud
out.
you. I applaud you. Yeah, that's amazing.
I think that was it for questions, unless I can't see on my screen when you're sharing. Is that it, Caitlin, Trina? Cool. Well, thank you so much, Ed. Let's see, we have one question we would like to ask you. Ed, for producers who are just beginning to navigate land use and agriculture development, what are the most common pitfalls you see, and how can they proactively avoid them?
Well, the largest thing for now is systematic barriers and including systematic complexities. But don't let that stop you because there's all these like extended timelines. Both governments, although they recognize, administrative timelines, but for us out on the land, that's where your production timeline comes into places to just make sure you plant something and actually get out to the ground and fail, fail and fail and fail. It helps you to like get up there and to succeed. But there's so many different, there's don't be limited by the government. That's what I'm trying to say. And there's so many different ways to succeed, and you can do it. You can do it. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just before we close, we really appreciate if you could take a moment to complete our short evaluation survey. Your feedback will help us strengthen future Gather to Grow webinars. We have dropped the link in the chat, I believe, and you can also scan it off your phone on the computer too.
We have one
Um,
more question.
yeah. Oh, we do? Okay. What is it?
The question is, do you know if anyone has tried to introduce bison in the area? And if so, how does that process differ?
I don't think so. I don't think there's enough forage for bison, honestly. But there is the Wolf Spring Ranch that the Navajo Nation purchased a few years back that they're using out in Colorado. They're using that for their bison herds, and I don't really know if I haven't seen a buffalo here on the Navajo Nation. Yeah, but there is on the Wolf Spring Ranch up in Colorado that the Navajo Nation purchased. Yes, that's a really good question. Yeah, a lot of these questions are really good. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. On behalf of NAFSA and NISCN, thank you again to Ed Miles Harvey, CEO of Conservation Planning, for navigating land use and agriculture development for farmers and ranchers. So thank you to everyone who joined today. And as a reminder, this session was recorded and will be available on the NAFSA YouTube channel. And I will also send a follow-up to all the RSVPs. We appreciate the important work you're doing in your community and hope today's session provided tools you can use moving forward. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.